Welcome everybody. So our plan is to have a bit of discussion here, and I'm going to start mainly reading the leaflet from ECAWAR, and then we're going to walk down to White Avenue, and as we did a couple of weeks ago, we're going to just picket at the corner of White Avenue and 104th Street. So we're going to spread out along there. We have leaflets. We got a very good reception last time from people who are wanting to know what's going on and are trying to make sense of a lot of events that are deliberately being misrepresented and a huge amount of disinformation, right? So I think the thing that's on all our minds today is that we can't permit the tragedies of the last week and the killing of a soldier and a young reservist to be used by the Harper government for their anti-war agenda and for a whole series of attacks on people's basic rights, and including legislation which they already had coming down the pipe, which will strengthen the ability of the government and CSIS and the RCMP, the undercover agencies, to act with impunity, further undermining the rule of law and public authority. So this is really a time for us to uphold our principles and to stand firm that we stand against the use of violence to settle disputes between nations, internally or externally. That we stand against all these attempts to deprive Canadians of their ability to discuss calmly and rationally what's going on. And we really saw that in Ottawa this week when the events were used. I read something where somebody gave the example when there was gunmen in the Rideau Centre a few years ago, and the difference in how this was treated, even though there was a lone person with a gun who had already been killed. They kept all of Ottawa locked down for the whole day. They disrupted the cell phone service so people couldn't speak to each other, and immediately started speaking, drawing conclusions that this was a terrorist attack, even when the police were saying that that they had only begun their investigation. So in this manner, everything is used to push the agenda of war and violence and criminalization of dissent. So let's speak for a minute about what's taking place and why Canada is going to send fighter planes to Iraq, and it has not yet engaged in Syria. But everything is pointing not only to a ground war in Iraq and Syria, but the aim that we have seen over and over and over again, which is regime change in Syria, and also ambitions to attack Iran, and a much, much larger war. So we are here really to speak against a third war in Iraq and the pretext of ISIS. So why do we call it a pretext? So let's first think about what was going on 3 years ago. ECAWAR was standing against the invasion and the bombing, and then the invasion and aggression against Libya. And we were told that all these forces were freedom fighters and so on, and that this was the fight of democracy to bring down Gaddafi. And today, what do we have in Libya? We have a complete disintegration of the society, violence and chaos everywhere. And who did it give rise to? It gave rise to the ISIS fighters. The same was true in Syria, where again Canadians are told, and these young men were told, that these are freedom fighters in Syria and everyone should support them. They're fighting for democracy. And then, of course, when these forces that they themselves give rise to are no longer under their control. Now that's a pretext for war and invasion and regime change. So it's very, very important to have discussion as to what is taking place and what is a pretext. Because we stand against terrorism of any kind. But we are not going to accept Harper's conception that anyone is a terrorist who doesn't agree with him, or anyone is a terrorist who stands against U.S. dictate. Isn't we, as far as ECAWAR is concerned and the people of the world are concerned, it's terror when you bomb people from the skies, and it's not going to end terror on the ground. It's terror when you destroy the infrastructure of a country, when you kill hundreds of thousands of people, when you destroy the clean water, the electricity, the schools, the hospitals, people's homes. This is terror. But we're being, the demand is that we accept a version of terror where the people of Palestine fighting for their right to be and fighting to have the right to determine their own affairs are called terrorists, and those who rain terror down upon them, who've forced the people of Gaza into an open-air prison, they are called, legitimate self-defense. And so we don't accept this. We ourselves have to define these things. And I think it's really important to think about how the word terror and terrorism is being used at the present time. So CSIS and the RCMP are already promoting the idea that expanded powers, including the ability to detain people with extremist views, is necessary in order to prevent a repeat of the events of October 22nd. So let us just remind ourselves that the security agencies in Canada have a very long record of depriving Canadians of their rights and violating human rights. Let's just take the case of Omar Khadr, who just this week the court has declared that he has the right to proceed with his civil suit against the Canadian government for conspiracy with the American government to deprive him of his rights and subject him to torture. It's been 10 years that the Canadian government, despite 2 Supreme Court rulings and a host of other rulings in the courts, have continued to deprive him of his rights and speak of him as a terrorist and a war criminal, neither of which are based in fact. We can remember the case of Mahar Arar, who was imprisoned, picked up by the Americans on false information, imprisoned in Syria. We can remember the cases of the people under security certificates who are deprived even of the right to know what the evidence is against them, who can be held indefinitely forever in detention without a trial, without ever knowing what the charges even being laid against them, without knowing what the evidence is, and without any due process. So we really have to work very hard right now to bring out what it is that's being planned, and to make sure that Canadians understand and take a stand against these things. So ECAWAR stands against all forms of terror, but especially we will keep standing against state terror. Just to finish, I just want to remind everybody what ECAWAR stands for. We stand for the work to build an anti-war government in Canada so that Canada is a factor for peace, not war in the world. We oppose the use of force in international affairs. We uphold the international law that says that aggression is the supreme crime. We uphold the right of people to decide their own fate and their right to be. And we stand for friendly relations with all people. We don't agree with or accept the division that Harper and Obama are trying to impose, that the people of the world have to be divided into those who are good and those who are evil, civilized and uncivilized. So we reject this. So we I encourage everybody, sign our sign-up sheet if you're not already part of our work, and come and take part in our regular pickets. There's other things you can do. Invite people to come and speak. We can provide a speaker at your school, at your in your neighborhood, in any organizations that you belong to, and come and participate in that work. So with that, I just want to see if anyone else wants to speak and have anything to say just before we start our walk.